Alrighty, hey guys, Ridgeway here with our next lesson for this unit. So we are going to be looking at the British here, very specifically with imperialism to kind of kick off our imperialism focus for this kind of section of the class. With all that being said, again, use Pear Deck to log in. Let's talk about kind of what our big objectives here that we are looking for. First, I do have a fun warm-up question, which is guess on Pear Deck what percentage Britain owned of Earth's total land in 1919. Don't cheat and look it up. Just make a guess, and we'll talk about it in class when we next meet. But let's talk about what our big objectives are here. So we're going to look at what are the motivations for British imperialism and its effects. And then we're going to look at two different places that the British colonized as kind of case studies for, kind of, again, looking at motives, effects, imperialism generally. So first things first, looking at the British East India Company and then eventually the setup of the Raj with the British in India. Now this part I'm actually not going to be going through with you on the video walkthrough. This is going to be something that you're going to do on your own. So looking at, well, why did the British colonize India and what was that like? And so to do that, there's a short reading I would like you to complete here. That gets into the motivations, and then this video gives you a sense of what colonization was like under the British East India Company. Okay, now you will also notice we're talking about this company quite a lot. It sounds pretty vicious and nasty. They were. There are a lot of ties to mercantilism that we will discuss in class when we next meet. Okay, so you're just going to do a quick summary then on Pear Deck once you have done these two activities. I've got those two questions for you here. But until then, I'm going to go ahead on with the rest of the video lesson. Again, just pause the video, take some time to do that, and then we will go ahead and knock out what it is going to look like then for the British in another place, and that is China. Okay? I got a fun little question here. If the world were confronted by, aliens show up, we assume they're intelligent. Would it be better for us to isolate ourselves or to open up for them? And you might have different feelings about this, but holy cow, does history provide an interesting parallel, which we're going to take some time to look at. Okay, so China and Britain, a little bit of context. Okay, so again, at this point, the British East India Company is going just absolutely nuts in... Pretty, are you okay? You alright? You're sneezing like crazy. I know, we're almost done. Okay? Sorry, my dog's going nuts back here. So, just like they did in India, okay, the British really desperately want to trade with China. Okay, there are things, as I mentioned there, I got a few lists of them here. Exotic Chinese goods like tea, silk, but also like silk and porcelain especially, but also spices. The thing that's a little bit unique, though, about China compared to India is that China had a much more unified governmental approach, broadly speaking, to imperialism than India did, which was kind of more, when the British ran into it, a little bit more broken up in terms of its, control. Why that matters is because then the Chinese were able to be very, very insistent with the British that the only thing that they had, the British had, that they were interested in was silver. Now, why does that matter for us? Well, because we learned through mercantilism that that for the purposes of the game of mercantilism, the number one thing that matters is that you are taking in hard currency, gold, silver, things like that. And over time, what this trade is going to cause, again, because they're having to shell out silver for this, for this kind of trade constantly, is this loss of profit, which again, in mercantilism, that just raises these huge red flags. And so the British East India Company, who we've already met, again, in India, they're the ones running the trade over here in China. They come up with a plan to get all of their silver that they've earned back. And the solution that they come up with, okay, is opium. And opium, if you're not familiar with it, it is we'll call it the historical grandparent to heroin. Okay, so modern day opioids, that's where that we get this word from. It is going to be the British East Indies Company strategy for how they are going to get their money back. Okay, so the strategy is, yeah, it's as simple as that. Addict China to opium and get the silver back as payment. Okay, and what the British start to do, very quite literally, is just dump tons and tons of opium into China through coastal ports all up and down the coastline. Now, China just doesn't take this lying down. They do try to stop it. They confiscate opium shipments. They dump it in the ocean. They'll try to burn it. They just won't let it, in some cases try to come ashore. And Britain actually declares war on China for doing this. And this starts a whole bunch of, actually, it's kind of more than one conflict called the Opium Wars. China's actually going to lose this. And in the treaty that they sign, that will end the Opium Wars, they actually have to give Britain not only they're forced to stay open with trade for them, but Britain is allowed to take control of Hong Kong nearly permanently all the way until 1997. And really only within, I'd say, like the last 5 years, starting back in like 2020, did China really force Hong Kong to fully reintegrate into Chinese dictatorial control. Okay, so do a little bit of connection writing on Pear Deck. How does this all connect to mercantilism? Obviously, it's a really, really dark chapter and really, really messed up, but the connections there are pretty incredible. Okay. Now, another event that I just kind of want to mention here, again, just as a quick, more relatively recent interaction that China had after this with the West is something called the Boxer Rebellion. So the Boxers were, and you can Google about them, they're very interesting. Their real name was the Righteous and Harmonious Fists. They were a group in China that were dedicated, kind of founded on the idea of resisting Western pressure. Now, what does this mean? It didn't mean just like, things like the Opium Wars, although certainly that, would have obviously, not been okay with them. It was things like Christianity and other Western influences. And really, it's a good example that we have of like early Asiatic nationalism and trying to resist the influences of what they saw as this kind of creeping in of Westernization. Okay, as you can see there on the slides, they go and they will burn churches, kill foreigners. They will go and attack missionaries and and even their own people who had converted to Christianity. And what happens, as you can see there, is the West, Britain, Russia, Germany, Japan, Austria, Italy, and even the United States, because it's set up by this point, will send troops to shut this rebellion down. And the West will enforce out of this something called the open door policy. Now, the open door policy is kind of just what was suggested at the end of the Opium Wars. And it's this idea that China is forced to stay open for business, whether they like it or not. And it's kind of a very interesting, odd start to a very long and still very complicated economic relationship between the United States and China that is still very, very relevant today. Okay, so come up with a quick 8-word summary of China's response to Western pressure here on Pear Deck. And then I've got an exit ticket for you for all of today's lesson that I'd like you to do by doing a quick drawing activity. Okay. Other than that, that'll bring the end to this lesson of our quick intro to imperialism, and I will see you guys in class. All right, see you later.